Wow. Warm welcome to the How Hebel am Ufer. Warm welcome to Berlinale Talents. It has been an amazing week so far, and it's my utmost pleasure again, not to introduce the guest, but to introduce you as our audience, as our partners, friends, filmmakers, of course, talents, everyone, because this house here has been filled with so many wonderful vibes and energies over the week, and I think we will do another peak here today. And as always, before we introduce guests, we also ask you to introduce to each other just very silently. So have a look around on the left and on the right side, because creating community is what Berlinale Talents is about. And creating community for me is really about bringing the moderator on stage, as long as I want to hesitate anymore. And he's here, Sareen. Please welcome him on stage. Hello. So.
Vielen Dank. Bis später. Good evening. I'm Sareen. I'm part of the selection committee for Features A Generation, but my first home at the Berlinale is at Talents. So I'm delighted to be back on this stage to enter in conversation with some of the most high-flying artists of our generation. So thank you very much for being here. Welcome back as well. It's been a while. And yeah, thank you. It's a dangerous thing to meet your heroes, but that's exactly what I'm going to do tonight. These filmmakers and artists are people that I've been watching for the last 15 years, ever since I discovered what film was really. And the dedication with which they come to their craft is something utterly powerful and beautiful. And they put this in everything they do, especially in the film that we're going to talk about tonight, Todd Tower. So please join me in welcoming Hildur Guðnadóttir. Sophie Kauer. Nina Hoss. Cate Blanchett. And a maestro of a director, Todd. I think there's a bit of a photo call with all of you just here for now. I'll step away for a second.
Could you turn to us for a second? That's right in the middle. No, not really. Okay, Dina, one more time over here, please. Big smile. Okay. Dina. Okay.
Sophie, would you mind swapping the code very quickly?
We were told you would go away.
Yes. Goodbye. Thank you so much. Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to photobomb this if you continue. Right, okay. I'm glad that's done with. I guess the first thing to say is welcome home, because this film became a reality in this city, and it's in the background and yet in the foreground at some times, especially in the second half or the last half of the film. But like a good parent after a long business trip, Todd, you come bearing gifts, and we'll see one of them in about 40 minutes' time, which is called The Fundraiser, and I'm delighted that this is the first time the film's going to be shown, so I'm delighted to be able to share it with the audience here. I guess perhaps to start off, was it always obvious to you that Berlin should be the home of Tau?
Yes, it was always going to be Berlin. There was no other place. I knew that even before I started the script. Yeah. Yes.
Are we talking or are we being photographed?
I hope we're talking, and I please ask all the photographers to respect that and leave. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Next to you. Yeah, thanks. Take two. This is a rehearsal movie, and we can start again. You were talking about Berlin being obvious.
Yeah, well, I mean, this character is an American that's being photographed while we're talking.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it, sir. It's very disrespectful. Please stop.
Doesn't matter. Anyway.
Right, I'm really sorry, guys.
No. That's it. So, I mean, Lydia Tarr, how many of you have seen the film? Show of hands? Okay, all right. So for those of you who've seen the film, you understand. So she's an American. She has, wanted to climb to a very, very specific place in her discipline, and the Oz for classical music is Berlin. So it had to be Berlin.
And perhaps even the country more generally. I mean, in Germany, music is quasi-sacred. And that is definitely, obviously, something that is becoming quite a haunting, actually, fact for the whole film and for the main character that Cate plays, Lydia Tarr. But before the music, perhaps next to the music, Lydia is in charge of this massive cultural institution that is the Philharmonie. How did you arrive at that understanding? I mean, that specific angle that she would have to bear the burden of being a public intellectual. When did that sort of come into play in the script?
Well, immediately. I mean, this character was a character I had been thinking about for a very long time, and not in any relationship to this particular cultural institution, but I think at the time when I made my first notes about her, like 10 years before I started the script, she was maybe running a media organization or something like that. I don't even remember, to be honest with you. But I had no place to put her, And then in March 2020, at the beginning of the lockdown, Focus Features, Peter Kujawski and Kiska Higgs said, would you be interested in doing something about classical music or a conductor? And I said, sure. And they said, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, I can't tell you. You have to trust me. You'll probably hate it, But I knew then that that's where I would put her, But the idea mainly was that she was sitting atop, as you say, a bureaucracy or a power structure, and that's what I was interested in terms of that character, was how could that character sort of have this journey to be able to have an audience be able to walk around power and see how a power works, and that it's not unidirectional, it's omnidirectional, and an orchestra, a cultural hierarchy such as that is a perfect way of doing that, because there's a front of house, there's the back of house, there's many different ways to sort of examine that.
I guess what's fascinating when you take that angle is that the film is built as a sort of political allegory in a way, because we have this figure at the center on the podium, very much like, the early modern sovereign would be presiding over a city-state. And I'm always, harken back to the image of Hobbes' frontispiece with this sovereign towering over the populace, but composed of the citizens, right? And I think that's such an interesting way of looking at the orchestra. Lydia Tarr can't be without them, and yet she tries to dominate them. Cate, how did you approach such an obsessive figure?
Yes, as you say, her instrument is a human instrument, and so it's volatile and unpredictable, and of course they're coming out of the pandemic having not had any chance to make any sound at all. So there's a particular obsessive need to want to make up for lost time. But I thought it was a really fascinating setting. You know, it's a classical music takes place in an atmosphere of, as you would know, Sophie, intense rigor and discipline and hours and hours and hours of practice. You know, and then for those moments of inspiration, it's like you perfect a bar, a phrase, and then you play it again, and you constantly have to return to your weak spots so that you can move across them with alacrity, and I think that takes a particular type of application. And you know, I remember my husband was reading a biography of Giacometti, and apparently during the wars he was estranged from his beloved, and he said, "I'm going to return, but I'm working on something really, really important." And 4 years later, he returned with 4 matchboxes full of dust. And so he ground it into the ground. And in a way, I thought about that a lot with Lydia, you know, that she's, unbeknownst to her, while she's conducting this funeral march, you know, it's this destiny that she's trying to avoid meeting herself. She's sort of grinding the joy out of the thing that she once loved. So, yeah, it was fascinating. But that was a very long-winded answer to your question. The short answer is, I suppose I just had to run headlong into the music, and through the music, I suppose I hopefully began to approach this extraordinary creature that Todd had put on the page.
And practice is perhaps a key word here, right? Because it's a philosophy of filmmaking that Todd offers through the film, and that structures the way you approach the character as well. I mean, he insists on the fact that this is a rehearsal film, and that, as you just said, you know, practice makes perfect. But what exactly went into that? And perhaps I can be even specificer here. I mean, really specific in terms of technique and your hands. To me, watching the film, it was so obvious that you'd found the character through her hands because of the importance of the motions to the conductor, but also in other instances, her nervousness, the effects of the pandemic, her shyness. I mean, there's something there that's so sharp in the way she says no to the world. Could you maybe say a bit more about that?
It was interesting not being a musician and not being a conductor. I found a liberation from my terror, frankly, in the preparation through watching dancers. And there's a friend of mine who's a choreographer here. I'd said, had I seen the work of Xavier Leroy? I said, no. And he had watched Simon Rattle conduct The Rite of Spring. And he literally turned every gesture, every facial posture he made in the conducting of that extraordinary work into a dance piece. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'm more of a dancer than a musician in a way. So, you know, I sort of live on stage, so I sort of lent into that. And it sort of freed me a bit from my terror, so that I could then watch conductors and realize that I could try and make it my own. But it's a little bit like we were talking about this today. It's not that these things are sex scenes, but when you think about a sex scene, you know, there's a generic way of kissing, right? And you have to, the first thing you ask the director is, what's this scene about? What are we trying to reveal about this relationship, about this person? You know, otherwise it's just a sex scene, right? So there's a series of rehearsal moments, vignettes, and what can we reveal about the relationships to the orchestra? How are you going to shoot it? What does it say about the states that the characters are in? So once you treat them like scenes, then all of that preparation you've done, you just simply use them to communicate the scene, like you would with words. And so once I sort of started to do that, then it sort of fed into the psychology, and it had a purpose rather than just being me showing off my homework, you know, which would have been really boring.
Perhaps one last question about the workings of Lydia Tarr. I discovered a lot of things preparing for this interview, obviously, but one fascinating figure that I'd never really heard of at all is Antonia Bricco. And I watched the documentary, the 1974 documentary that you mentioned, which is very painful, actually, to watch. She's an incredibly spirited woman who has enormous amount of energy and humor. She's, you know, real force of nature in that way. But it is gut-wrenching to listen to her speak about not being able to conduct. And she has this wonderful sentence where she says it's a perpetual heartbreak. And I wonder to what extent, I mean, there are many figures that you look to create the character, Susan Sontag and John Didion, obviously, you've talked about this elsewhere, but I do wonder whether Antonia was perhaps a key of sorts in any way.
She's name-checked, and so, of course, to my shame, I didn't know about her. And I watched, it was one of the first things I did was watch that documentary, which is quite difficult to come by, but if you can watch it, it is
It's on YouTube now.
heartbreaking. Oh, is it? Yeah. There we go. Everything's on YouTube. Yes, it was a real education because, of course, if you're playing, we've said this a lot, but it is a work of fiction. It's a fantasy. You know that there's. I mean, Simone Young was extraordinary in what she achieved in Hamburg, but really Natalie Stutzman has taken over in Atlanta, and there's Alondra de Palma, and there's the extraordinary female conductors, but running what we have described as the pinnacle of deep European orchestra, it doesn't happen. But it's important to look at the moment that would have led a creature like Lydia Tarr to be able to take the podium, and so that was an important part of the process. And all of those groundbreaking, heartbreaking, missed opportunities, not by Antonia herself, but by the men who were running the institutions who didn't capitalize on her extraordinary talent, and the fact that she made her own orchestra of extraordinary musical strays. Anyway, she made music anyway.
I mean, I think it's important for, just so you understand who she was, she had guest conducted with the BPO as a young woman, a young conductor, and was celebrated instantly over here. And then she went to New York, and she was sort of turned into kind of a dog act. And there was a lot of well-heeled people in New York that decided that they were going to organize an orchestra for her of all female players. And she performed at Carnegie Hall. But again, it was this idea of single gender. And there was a certain point where she said, I've done that, now can I just play with the musicians I want to play with? And everybody that funded it said, similar to the film, sort of said, if you do that, you'll probably lose your funding. And of course, that's what happened. So.
And as you say, it feeds into the film because Lydia's trying to move past that, right? She has the sponsorship program where she nurtures young talent, and she has a meeting in a restaurant with the character played by with the character called Elliot Caplan, where she wants to move past that, but there's something there that societally is no longer available. She's stuck with that identity in a way, even though she's trying to perhaps think post-gender in terms of the art that she wants to foster. Nina, facing Cate, facing Lydia, I must say, facing Lydia, practically the same person to my mind now. Facing Lydia is this very empathetic character named Sharon. And every time Monica Villi cuts to you, because the editing is so brilliant there in those scenes, the contrast between Lydia's autocratic impulses and your humane touch is a delight to behold. it's obvious to anyone who's seen you on stage or on screen, and I think particularly of Schwesterlein, which is one of my favorite films that was at Berlinale, recognizes that empathy as something that you do absolutely brilliantly. But I do wonder, if we just take a step back to the rehearsal process, at what point did you find the right tone, the right note for Sharon, and what was it like facing that sort of monstrous double that is Lydia, not Cate?
I'm not sure if you agree. No, you know, I think I never know if I hit anything. You know, you just go for it and you try, and you like Cate said, you grind down as deep as you can, and you, like I said, when like a little pig, look for the truffles in it. You know, and I found that Sharon is so rich. You know, she has empathy. That's why she can bear Lydia, but also that's why she loves her, because she's longing for what Lydia gives her. And it's something that she maybe even instigates, you know, in her, because she, you know, in relationships, you fall in love because someone is the way they are. And then maybe after a while you start going, yeah, but don't do that. Don't do that. And don't do, you know? And I think that's where they are a little bit. But on the other hand, like in this first scene, for example, I found this sentence from Todd where Sharon then says, our daughter has some problems, and I think she's kind of, you know, reclusive, and she has these blue marks on her shins, and I said, yeah, well, why don't you do something about it, Sharon? You know, no, she says it to Lydia, and she knows what she's gonna do. Sharon would never do it that way, but it's more effective, it's quicker, and it works. and so she knows exactly who she's dealing with, but it's also someone as a musician, and she encourages it. But as a musician, I think what Sharon lacks is the free spirit and this freedom of going against rules, of going after her own interpretation, no matter what. Because Sharon has, in the position in the orchestra, is to be responsible for everyone, to be
the concert master.
Yeah, to be the concert master, to be the translator for the conductor, to kind of work with the group towards the sound that the conductor is looking for. So she has to be also a psychologist, and she has to be empathetic, because she needs to feel the room. She needs to feel, are the musicians okay? If someone has something going on, then you go there and you make them feel good, and so that they can create in the best possible form. And so there is empathy in Sharon, but there's also, she's longing for something that she can only get through her, and that's why the loss
is it
great.
recognition? What is it? What is she longing for? Is it recognition? I mean, what is it that she's longing for?
Well, partly, probably. I guess I thought she would have never lived in the apartment that they live in, for example. I think Sharon grew up in an apartment that is Lydia's music apartment, you know. That's probably that's how we live, no, in Berlin. So this is some of us. Some live in the bunker. So I think she has, it's that, but I truly believe that she is very much in love with Lydia, and she loves creating music. That's their passion, and to be able to experience that kind of work with someone who takes it just to another level is invigorating and exciting, and I think that's what she's looking for.
The only trouble is that Lydia thinks that love only lasts 7 minutes, and that's her key, as she talks about Mahler, right? And that the way that she wants to look at Mahler is this understanding of love, but it's timed, so it resembles passion more than anything else.
Yeah,
perhaps.
but also in that moment she's avoiding intimacy or exposure. I think the biggest thing about Lydia is that she's running from her own shadow, and so she doesn't want anyone to know her secrets, you know. And I think that that is something about musicians and performing artists, is you can become incredibly superstitious. And when you read a lot about conductors, their score and the notations. It's a little bit like someone finding your diary. You know, you don't want to. You can, where you know, it's like when you talk about your process. It's like I'm only going to talk about it so much because not because I don't want to talk about it to anybody else. I don't want to articulate it to myself because there's a part of me that goes, well, if I become conscious about how I make something, then maybe next time I try and make it, I'm going to become self-conscious, which is the enemy of art, and I won't be able to do anything. So, you know, there's a you know, in that interview situation, there is a performative sense of self. So, of course, the flippant, I sound like I'm defending her, but, you know, the 7 minutes is like, I'm not going to give you my magic recipe. You know.
I mean, Cate, you mentioned the composer's diary. Hildur, what did your diary for this film look like? I mean, was it just, did you write Mahler down and then strike him out? How did you compose for the film?
Well, I don't really have a method, so I don't. That's the good thing about not having a method is that I don't have anything to share. Really, that's always the same. I really try to change it up all the time. So whenever I start a new, especially a film, you know, which I think every film is such a universe in itself, and I think my superstition is that if I have a method, I'm doomed. Because then I always have to do the same thing.
Fair enough. But Todd obviously brought you in at a very early point actually, which belies a rule in filmmaking and especially in Hollywood filmmaking perhaps. Could you maybe speak about the initial conversations you had and how music understood as rhythm is there in the film from the get-go in a way?
Yeah. It was really... I was really lucky to come in so early because we really got to talk about all the different aspects of the sound and the music and the psychology of rehearsing and the psychology of composing and this whole, you know, that's a whole universe in itself. And it was a really fun dialogue. It was an unusually fun dialogue. And obviously for me, who has dedicated my life to this specific process, you know, it was really, really just, you know, like so fun and so invigorating. And so I guess it started with the initial conversations between me and Todd were like, you know, how he was affected by sound as he was writing the script and what he was listening to as he wrote. And then we, you know, he was really affected by his father-in-law's medical alarm, which he brought to me in Berlin. He brought this alarm. So as he did that, you know, I'm bringing that into the music as well because, you know, all the sounds, they affect the music and all the music, you know, as a musician or as a composer, as we're writing or rehearsing something, it overtakes us, you know. So, you know, the music is not just happening when we're rehearsing; it's happening all the time, you know, as we're doing the dishes, as we're walking around, as we're sleeping, you know. So I thought it was really important that we have that also in the. We had the same understanding, like, you know, all of us who were working on the film, we had an understanding of what the tempo of that inner music was, you know, because this is the music that you don't see around musicians. It's the invisible layer that follows us around like this hovering ghost, you know, and it affects us, you know. So a lot of the music that I wrote was written for our tempo mapping that we did of the script, and then there was also the music that Lydia is writing in the film that
Which is called For Petra.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
We only hear a few ghostly notes, right, that Lydia and Olga, played by Sophie, play out for us. But maybe could you tell us a little bit about composing that fragment? I mean, it reminds me of, you know, the Sappho in a way. It's just we've got this tiny little thing that hangs there and then is gone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was really, you know, it was so interesting to write music for someone else that's writing, you know, for a completely different person than than myself, but also to write music for Lydia Tarr, because I think the music that she's writing tells us so much about the disconnect and the turbulence that she's experiencing in this point of her life, because she's created this giant persona, which is this conductor, and the music that she's performing there is very, has a lot of bravado. But then we also know that she goes to the Amazons and she does field recordings, and she's very explorative. She's supporting all these young composers, and in her hearts of hearts probably wants to be much more explorative in her music, and she is, when she's writing, she's much more fragile, so it was a really interesting thing to try to portray through the music this disconnect without being too literal about it, and to do it in this kind of, because we only have this certain amount of space and time for this insight into her character through the music. So it was really like an interesting way to work on this music. Yeah.
And then Todd, Hildur just mentioned that you were obsessively listening to music when writing the script. Was it classical music? What could you mention a few of the titles and how they perhaps shaped certain scenes even?
Sure. One thing I should say, though, first, is that I think it's important to mention that the theme that for Petra, Hildur, when she finished reading the script, correct me if I'm wrong, she just picked up her phone and she sang that theme wholesale, like as a reaction to her reaction to the story. And that recording is the recording that Lydia Tarr is hearing when she's following Olga down into the subterranean place. That's the same recording. It's off the iPhone.
Voice memos, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a kind of a beginning to end in terms of a full circle in terms of the moment she started thinking about it, which I think is interesting. What was I listening to? I was listening to a lot of stuff. I wasn't listening to a lot of concert music. I was listening to Gereshki, specifically this Kronos Quartet piece, and that I had been obsessed with since, 91, 92, whenever it came out. And I'd listened to that a great deal. We called it the Tar March. Fantasia. And Hildur had said, "What were you listening to?" And I said, "That." And she said, "Okay, well, that's her inner tempo, 120 beats per minute." And then she started writing other music that we could play on set, or that Cate could have in her ear if she wanted, that was at that gate. So, I listened to. I can't tell you everything I listened to. I had a few playlists depending on where I was in the script.
K-pop.
K-pop. Yeah. Banyan style.
Yeah. Looking forward to the TikTok videos of that. Sophie, playing an actor, acting as a cellist, what was that like? Because as much as Lydia is at a loss with herself and is sort of losing any sense of self, you come along as Olga, so determined and assured, and with such a coherent sense of who you are, and you thwart her tempo in such an interesting way. Could you tell us how you arrived at that gusto, in a way, that we see in the restaurant scene so brilliantly acted out?
Well, first of all, thank you. That was really kind of you to say. And secondly, I had two very lovely people who guided me to the character, Todd and Cate. We spent a lot of time discussing Olga and kind of her history and, I guess her thoughts and feelings. But I've always been very interested in people and what makes them tick, or their emotions. My mum's a psychologist, so I've always grown up with that. So I was really fascinated when I got to read the screenplay for the first time. I felt like it would be incredibly liberating to play Olga. As you mentioned, she's quite fearless. And what I really admire about her is she really doesn't worry about the consequences whatsoever. Not something I'd say that I can relate to, but I've definitely learned a lot from her. But no, it was so much fun to play a character who just is. I wouldn't say she's carefree, but yeah, she's. I think Todd calls her quite ferocious. I remember that word being in the script a lot, and her playing as well. That was kind of the hardest thing for me, to actually embody another character while playing the cello, to really think how Olga would kind of throw herself at the piece. I definitely wouldn't play the Elgar like that necessarily, which was why it was so lovely to record the concept album about half a year later, because then I got to have a go at the Elgar as me. But yeah, she really goes at everything with kind of, I like to say, with the blood, and really kind of attacks it and gives it so much passion and kind of, like she's kind of a bit of a force of nature. So I learned a lot from Olga. I miss her a lot. It was lovely to live with her for half a year. So thank you, Todd.
And in many ways, she's a younger version of Lydia. I mean, that is what is haunting, in a way, when she cuts through Lydia's life and these concentric paths that Lydia's on. She just sort of beelines and messes things up so interestingly. But I mean, Sophie, you just mentioned this album, and it does say something about this film, and Todd, your way of constructing not so much the one film that is called Todd, but this constellation of objects that gravitate around it, from the album to the film that we're going to see in a few seconds. Was that always the case? Did you always imagine that beyond this center of gravity that is Todd, you would have these satellites?
I was just happy to get a film made, you know. I mean, a lot of, I mean, the film is about process, but everybody on this stage that came along took that idea and bested it and took it beyond, you know. I mean, Cate very early on said, we need to experiment. We need to have our own process within the process. We need to have process for its own sake, and process that maybe no one will ever see but us, but it's a worthy exercise. So we did many things, you know. Some things that are suggested in the film, some things that no one will ever see, but were very, very valuable for our process of making the film. In terms of the concept album, that was a conversation that Hildur and I had from day one, you know, which was, wouldn't it be great, you know, and that was really Hildur's idea. What if we had a concept album? What if Lydia Tarr actually gets her Deutsche Grammophon cover? And she had that idea at when I first arrived here in Berlin, and I said, well, that will never happen. They'll never let us do that. And Hildur said, no, let's do this. We're going to make it happen. And to use your word, she was ferocious about it. So.
Very stubborn.
Yeah, very stubborn. Thankfully, yeah, no one would listen to me, you know. So, I mean, and that continued on through, you know. I mean, there, like I said, many things, and that's where I think, for me, you know, when I think about this film, you know, from a distance soon, that's what I'll really take away from it, is that the sense of play and the sense of discovery that we all had together, that. In the making of the film, in the making of everything, and try to get ourselves attenuated to that idea of actively being involved with process that wasn't, you know, performative, that wasn't just about the film itself.
Which comes out of your training as a jazz musician, does it not? I mean, does it bear that notion that, you know, when you're with talented peers, you can just have fun? Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a gendered term, but the term that they use in jazz is sidemen or leader, you know. But the best bands, there are no sidemen or leaders. There's just players, and those are magical bands. Those are the storied bands like VSOP and that. And you never talk about anyone individually. You talk about the players, you know, and that's exactly what we had here, you know. It was a very, very special experience, you know, and probably not repeatable and sort of vaguely tragic, you know, because...
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about film. We can repeat it on screen, and actually we can now watch this gift that I mentioned that's called the fundraiser. Would you like to maybe just say a few words about that in terms of the experimentation that
Yeah,
gave
so
birth
this
to it?
is, first of all, I would ask for your assistance in turning off all your phones right now, all of them. I'm going to. This is a piece of our experimentation that only everyone in this room will experience. No one else will ever see it. So.
How lucky.
So the idea behind this was, let's throw a party for her, or rather, Sharon Goodnow is planning this party, and that's enough said. If you've seen the film, you'll understand the idea behind it. This was a conversation early on that Cate and I had, which was a sort of fantasia, you know, a sort of down the rabbit hole, a tea party with a top hat, you know, this sort of fever dream after she sees the black dog, you know, kind of thing. And we thought, you know, we were looking for opportunities to do it, and we started working on it, and we kind of knew very, very early on that it was just an experiment. But we had it scheduled, so we got to finish it anyway. So Monica, Willie, and I, we never had it in the, you know, we never used any of it. And then when we'd finished, she said, "What about the fundraiser? We should put it together." And we did. And when we were mixing at Abbey Road, all our sound crew there, Deb Adair and everyone said, "Oh, we have to finish this. This is fantastic." I said, "I know, but we don't have any place to show it. It's not really meant to be shown." But when we found out we were coming to Berlin, we thought, this is it. So it's.
So just before we go to the world premiere of the fundraiser, like Aereo, Hildur has to leave us and go back to the skies to compose more music. So please join me in thanking her for gracing the stage with her presence again. Thank you. And I think we'll leave you with the film and be back in about 10 minutes' time.
Yep, about 10 minutes. Yep.
And really, there's so few intimate moments in life. And we're on a theatre stage, I'm sitting on a revolve. And when you're on stage, there's an energy transference between what happens here and what happens with you guys. It's a circle that's completed. And when you keep performing, but you know someone's pulled their phone out, and you know that this magic that we all create together, out of its context, the magic spell's broken. So I really do ask you, we're inviting you into a very intimate thing because we made this film here. So please, 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 let's keep this secret between us.
So I hope you all enjoyed that. And we can welcome our film team back on stage. Todd Field. Nina Hoss. Sophie Power. And Cate is gonna join us in a little second. to that. I guess we're starting without one of the members of the ensemble, but congratulations on what is a beautiful...
So what do you guys think? It's just us, you know. Now you're part of the process, so it keeps going, you know. That was really fun and bittersweet, you know.
Why bittersweet?
Because I'll never see it projected again, you know.
Is it really meant to be a sort of ephemera in a way, sort of like a magic lantern moment where it's just gone?
Yeah, just, yeah,
A
absolutely.
flummery, we call
Flummery.
it, yeah. But we had a lot of fun, as you can see.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. I mean, Todd, when you were introducing the film, you mentioned that it was a sort of fever dream moment. And what's fascinating to hear, actually, is the change in musical choices. Because we have, all of a sudden, this piece from Ravel and the Bolero, which turns this bal masqué or masquerade into a sort of, I don't know, wounded animal scene. I mean, I feel like Lydia is here a bit like a bull in a social arena that she doesn't want to be in, and then yet everything's so fun. Can you maybe say a few words about this, the contradictory registers that course through this short film between comedy and tragedy, perhaps even?
Yeah, I mean, well, there are many things going on in this short film. The idea behind the process was, on the one hand, exploring this marriage, this relationship between Sharon Goodnow and Lydia Tarr, you know, and the deep, deep love that they share for real, and also the very the connection to these players. I mean, everyone in that room, most of the orchestra is in that room, you know, which was great fun for all of us. But it's also very much sort of like a throwback, kind of the idea of a romantic scene between two people. Even what they're dancing to the Wiener Blood, or the Blood Waltz, you know, with Von Karajan conducting the BPO, and even the sort of way that they're talking to each other is very much like, you know, a 1930s MGM musical, and you know, and I mean with a smashed-in face, you know, and the idea that it's beautiful to a point, but there's a part when she's looking across the hall when she sees the managing director of the orchestra and her predecessor, where there's a moment of doubt, and this idea of does she surrender to this moment? Does she continue in this moment, or does she want to get away from it? You know, and this moment, it's one of my favorite moments, is when, you know, when Kate goes to the mirror and she's sort of looking at herself and sort of gathered, you know, she's you know, everything's still kind of beautiful until it's not, you know, this idea. So, well, the wounds are kind of pretty, you know, and then realizing she has to get away from everyone, you know, and then she goes into this other piece of this fantasia, which is sort of sitting with this idea that something is about ready to be over for her, you know, something that she's climbed a mountain, you know, much like the film, you know, and she's thinking about legacy. She's hearing her past from a distance, a sort of insistent, relentless, driving, you know, paradiddle on the snare drum of Ravel's Bolero. And then she comes across a very different version, like you do in dreams, of Olga, who's very, very different than she is in the film. She's like Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, you know, and that plays out very much like A Midsummer Night's Dream until it doesn't, because somebody's had too much to drink and they're barfing on the ground, you know, and then she goes back up into the other world, you know. So it was an idea with sort of taking her through this sort of strange, fantastic sort of tour of pleasures, but also as a way, you know, in a sort of archetypical way, to sort of play with these relationships, the other side of these relationships, you know, the unconscious part of the character.
But if Lydia is a sort of Oberon, then she doesn't quite meet her Titania anymore. I mean, this is a very touching moment as a satellite object, or even part of the film, if you want to take it in that, because we do see this couple and their love, and we actually see Lydia laugh and smile, which is something that's really rare in the film, and so different to you as a person, Cate, and you know, your stage presence and everything that goes around it. I do find that to be quite fascinating. And when she looks into the mirror, as you were just mentioning, Todd, and smiles in this forced manner, there's something that mask keeps on slipping in and off. Could you maybe say a bit about that aspect of the character and how what's at stake?
Yeah, it was something, I mean, that we talked about a lot, you know, the inner life of the character. And I think for me, what I found most interesting, because obviously, for those of you who've seen the film, it's a process film, it's not a performance film. So we're talking a lot about process, and I find, having, you know, spent many hours on stage, that there's something that happens, a deepening of the understanding of a character over time, which you rarely get on film. What happens, if you're lucky, you get to rehearse. And what happens is you rehearse in pre-production, and then you perform. And we thought, well, we're making a process movie, so why don't we keep the process alive? How do you, you know, keep the experimentation alive? And there was something, because she's going through a state of transformation, from which you do as an artist, particularly mid-career artist. You crash and burn, you stop working, or you push too far into success until your art becomes incredibly thin. You know, you have to go through some sort of crucible in order to keep making work. And so part of that, there was a kind of a metaphor in her turning 50. And so we talked about viscerally understanding what that experience would be. And so for me, it's almost like, because this was part of the process, the turning 50, the physical transformation, as well as the metaphorical transformation that she's undergoing, was so alive for me within the character, because we'd been through that process. And I've never, ever had that on film. And even though we knew this would never be seen, we all understood that this was alive in the relationship. It was alive, you know, the notion between reality and the muse. And so, you know, people have talked about Lydia as being a predator, and I thought, well, no, it's like she's a muse. And I thought, well, there's no right or wrong reading of the film. But, you know, this was so alive for me as part of who the character actually was. And that the tragedy was that the success and the influence and the authority and the power had made the kind of the responsibility or the outward-facing mask so thick that she no longer had access to that play and that joy and that ease that you have when you are light off into your career as an artist, without, as you were saying earlier, a sense of consequence. You have such a healthy lack of consequence, an outcome. Everything's part of a process. But when you stand up there as a principal conductor, they want results. They want to see a performance. And so what happens to failure? What happens to experimentation? What happens to play and joy and, you know, open-ended conversation, you know, things that go nowhere, games, you know? And so that's all alive in Lydia, but because she's about to, you know, in a way she has to destroy herself in order to re-find that aspect of her. But viscerally understanding it, you know, it was very much alive, albeit dormant for her, you know, for me inside the character in the film that we ultimately see.
And I guess that's very much alive to you as actors. Nina in particular, I mean, Nina and Cate, your career has obviously taken a lot of incarnation. I mean, you've incarnated so many roles for the screen, but you are theatre actors as well. And I wonder to what extent that has played in and fed the joy with which you perform this piece, but also in the movie entire itself. I think perhaps one specific point to just frame the question a little bit more is the way in which Todd films interiors and the couple's apartment in particular. They're filmed in much the same way as auditoriums or the stage scenes are, right? These oneers that go in and follow them as they walk around, and we saw it again here in the legacy of Eyes Wide Shut is obviously, you know, a ghost, a beautiful ghost that hovers over the film. But I do wonder whether that notion of a one shot or a one take was something that was alive for you, Nina, and how you drew energy even from it.
Well, it becomes a sort of dance also, you know. So that element comes to it with, for example, we did this. I think the only one shot I had was the last scene, I guess, and so it does something to the way you only have that much time. For example, you know you gotta arrive at a certain point so that the camera is ready, but then you want to be very free and explorative in the moment. So you gotta. It is then about having a long breath, yeah, and that's theater. That's to have the long breath and to know some moments it goes like this and this is okay, and then it comes back up again, and then you know this. And I think that was so beautiful with Cate, because I think we met actually through this, having done theater, having done the same roles also. She even played Groß und Klein, where I still think, why Groß und Klein? But I do understand, because the character is phenomenal. And Hedda and so on. And I think that if you feel that you're very much, it felt like very much at ease to explore those things, because we knew the language somewhat without having to say anything.
And Cate, I mean, one of the other embodiments of beautiful female figures on stage that you've done in the past, I think I'm not wrong in saying, is Blanche in Streetcar, who's also a character who's running away from things, and her past in particular. And I wonder whether you could maybe, and before I open to questions from the floor, maybe talk about perhaps this illness that Lydia suffers from, and which we hear mentioned at the beginning of the fundraiser as well, which is to say nostalgia.
Yeah, nostalgia, is that nostalgia, yeah.
But she mispronounces it and says nostalgia, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps you could speak to that, Todd.
Okay, Todd.
Low-hanging fruit. Well, I mean, that is the technical term, and oftentimes when somebody falls on their face, there's a twisting of the neck, and there's a nerve damage that happens where there's a burning sensation on the shoulder, where it feels like you've fallen asleep in the sun or something like that, where you can't even put a shirt on, it hurts so much. And that's the medical term for it. And as the doctor rightly says, there's no treatment for it, other than perhaps she's somewhat crooked and could use an adjustment. But
the only solution is time.
Time, that's right. The only solution is time, exactly.
But perhaps
rolls back into the idea of nostalgia, and, you know.
Yeah, but perhaps just, I mean, at the risk of laboring this point, I think what's fascinating to me in understanding Lydia is when she finally does return home and we find out that she's maybe called Linda, right? So that nostalgia is actually...
Not in this movie.
Not in this one. Not in this one. But I do wonder, it does offer a different dimension to the character to know that she's perhaps the product of immigrant parents who've come to America with a different music in mind, a different set of cultural values, a different yearning. And so perhaps we could conclude on that point, because I do think it is what makes the tragedy even more specific and fascinating in a way, that historical dimension.
Yeah, I mean, none of it's... I mean, that's important in terms of our conversation, in terms of building the character, in terms of executing the character. But and you're feeling, you're getting a sense of it. Hopefully, when she returns home to her Staten Island beginnings, you know. But yeah, I mean, the idea was here. You know, there's something about a lot of times you meet people at the very, very top of a discipline. And there are people that have the odds are so great that this person would be there. I think we're taught from a very young age that there's an industrial sort of accepted path that we're supposed to take for success. And I think the danger of that is knowing too much. And if you're someone that comes from a very different background, that is, in this case, someone that has no relationship to concert music and no relationship to any of that at all, and that the only sort of activation for them coming from immigrant parents, coming from, you know, the idea where an accordion was the only instrument you were put in your hands as a child, you know, and dancing polkas at social clubs or something out in Staten Island, is that once you see this window of, that's it, that you can chase something with a kind of passion because you don't know how impossible it is. And if you were raised in a family, like Sharon, for instance, she's the exception to that rule. She was raised around music. She was raised around players. Her sister worked at Deutsche Grammophon. All of these that's Sharon's backstory. She could probably get as high as a concertmaster, and that's an incredible position for her to be in within this orchestra. But for someone, and this is a fairy tale because we don't have any female examples of this, unfortunately, of somebody running a major German orchestra as a chief conductor. But for an American specifically,
We have a concertmaster.
we have a concertmaster now. Yes, at the BPO for the first time in 141 years, just announced. But to have someone like Lydia Todd, you know, reach these heights, she would have to almost come from such a humble background to where it's somebody that's chasing a dream, and it really is a dream. I mean, the odds are so stacked against a character like this, and I think that's an important thing to understand about the character, because as much as this is an examination about power, it's also a character study, which is what it's cost this little girl that fell in love with this music and got just this far beyond her grasp. You know, it was, you know, her reach was exceeded by her grasp, and now she's sitting atop this power structure, you know, which was not part of that childhood dream. The childhood dream was all about making noise and being fabulous, you know. And now she's in a very much a HR situation where she has to manage this power structure and she has to manage other people, and maybe she's not particularly good at that, and maybe that had nothing to do with her dream at all, you know.
And it's what's costing her dream to a certain extent. I think we have about 10 minutes for questions from the floor, which could be obviously about the fundraiser as well. So maybe no one has a mic in the room. Yeah, they do. Okay, up there. I think we have one person on the balcony just here. I'll please keep your questions short and to the point so that we can get as many as we can in. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try. My question is both to Todd and Cate. I think Todd said in many interviews that that you wrote this character specifically in Cate with mind. So my question would be, what in Cate as actress made you want to do that, to write it for her and with her? And to Cate, I'm about to see Todd for the first time tonight, but from the...
Oh shit, spoiler alert.
The whole thing was a terrible spoiler alert. But from little promotion videos that I've already seen, there are definitely a couple of parallels to Jasmine and Blanche. So my question to you would be...
So two questions. Ooh, you're greedy.
Yeah.
Well,
that was not the deal.
Anyways, the rest... Such a hustle to get a ticket here. Anyways, the question is, you're obviously a very versatile actress, but would you say this type of Blanche Duesque roles, both a goofball and a tragic heroine, this is your favorite type to play?
So you answer the first question.
Let's just skip mine. You could go online. I've said it a million times. She was cheap.
I was cheap.
Was not an expensive
but
film.
not easy.
Just liquor her up and just cut her loose, you know. I'll try to keep it brief.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cate and I had met one evening about 10 years before I started the script on another film that I wanted to make, a script that I'd written with Joan Didion, and we felt very strongly about Cate, and we were thrilled when she agreed to meet. That, if anyone who's sat in dialogue with Cate will tell you this, which is, you're not ready for that. She's really, you know, one of the great intellectuals you'll ever encounter. And don't, yeah, stop, don't do that.
Can we, next question.
Yeah. But I left that meeting just, you know, so excited, and Joan was excited too, but unfortunately that project never came together. So when I sat down to write this script, and I never write for actors for reasons that I think were probably pretty understandable, I write characters, but she wouldn't leave my sight. I couldn't get her out of my head. So I had to accept that, you know, because I was really setting myself up for incredible failure and disappointment, in so much as we hadn't spoken in 10 years. We didn't know each other particularly well. We had one single meeting, and I had no hope that she would want to do this, because there are all kinds of reasons for her to say no, you know. So when she said yes, I mean, you know, I was thrilled and terrified, because how was I possibly going to keep up with her, you know? And the question is, you can't.
I guess the second question was about tragedy, but
yeah, look,
I mean,
I too was thrilled and terrified. I mean, you don't get opportunities to play roles like this very often, nor do you get the opportunity to play Lotte or Hedda Gabler or Blanche Dubois. But there's no point in playing those roles. Like, there's no point in playing Hamlet unless you have a fabulous Gertrude, an amazing Claudius, unless you have a director who's going to eviscerate that play and know exactly why they want to tell that story right now. Otherwise, it's just a vanity exercise, and you may as well just sit in a rehearsal room and learn the lines. So it's about being in dialogue with the director and the other actors. So, you know, Blanche Dubois, it's because Liv Ullmann was directing it, you know, and Hedda Gabler, it's because my husband had done this extraordinary adaptation which brought the play, you know, to life. So that's why, and Todd was why this one, and then of course Nina and Sophie and everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Short and sweet.
Okay, I'll try. This is on. Oh, hi. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, I'm trying. Hi, my name is Uzamaka. I'm from Nigeria, and Cate Blanchett is paying attention to me. It's beautiful. So I'm just in awe of the presence that you command on screen. Like, every single time I watch, it's just mind-blowing. And I just wanted to know if you are aware that you command such presence on screen. Truly, I want to know.
News to her.
And if you do know, do you take any steps to ensure that you don't overshadow other people on screen? No, I'm being honest, because sometimes, you know, when you watch certain things, it's like, you know that people are trying to be the star of the scene, but with you, it's not. You're not trying to be the star of the thing. You just own the thing.
Okay, I think we get the point.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's called a close-up. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if they go in, yeah. I don't quite know how to answer that question. I think it's, look, I worked for the first time I did theatre in England, I was on the West End, and it was quite a brutal experience. And I worked with a very older actor who's since passed away, extraordinary. But in the previews, he did a thing, and as he exited, for some reason, we were all on stage, and the audience would erupt into applause. And then it kept happening every preview. And the director came back, and he was furious at him. And there's a thing you can do, apparently, which I've never learned, where you can elicit, it's a look or a speed which you exit off stage, which can elicit, it's like a magic trick, a response from an audience. It's like a wink. And I found that such a bizarre thing to do. It's like an attention-grabbing moment. And I think it's probably a generational thing, but it's antithetical, I think, to the way we all work. And this is very much, even though I had more lines, it was very much an ensemble feeling, and that comes from Todd, the director. It was like the crew were our first audience, but they were all part of the process. It's just that some of us are in front of the camera and some of us are behind. But it's like, I think we all treated the filmmaking process a bit like a revolve. It's just that, we happen to be in the front. So the only way I can do it, because you do become incredibly self-conscious very quickly, and I know I'm talking a lot now, but this is the act. Like, I'm quite shy, actually. And so the only way when I first started out, that I could even approach being looked at by a camera was to imagine that the lens was looking at the person who was off camera. So the camera was never looking at me. And that's the more you do, the worse that feeling gets. So it's a trick that you have to do. When you stand off stage, every night, even on the 120th performance, you have nerves, and those nerves are useful because that's adrenaline and that's energy, and that means you're taking a risk, and you're going to risk discovering something new and maybe it not working. You have to have that nervousness, and I think if you don't, then it's time to stop. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question though, but yeah.
I think we have time for one more, and I've given it to the young man at the bottom. Please keep it short, please.
Hi, so my question is for Mr. Field. So throughout Tar, there are instances where the ghosts of Lydia's past become something more than figurative. They're spatialized in a sense. And so I was wondering, at what point when you were coming up with Tar, did the idea of the hauntological or spectrality come in? Was that something that was always part of the film?
Yes. It was always part of the film, and it was always about how to treat it, and how is this character, how are things manifesting for her, the first time, like she's feeling something's coming, something's inevitable, and the first time you really feel that, and the first time that hopefully you don't hear it, but you feel Hildur's score come in, is when she's in the Carlisle Hotel. There's a moment she's brushing her hair. That's it, right? And the game's afoot then. That's really where the film starts. And again, going back to this film that only us have seen, that's sort of part of sort of a dream within a dream. So when this long oneer between Sophie and Cate, when she says, "My friend Anna," she won't leave. And she's leaning in and she's saying, "Do you still see her?" That's what she's thinking about, right? This idea that there's something there. There's something, bothering her, and where that's coming from, is up for grabs. But it's very real for her.
But this was all a dream. That's all we have time for tonight. But please join me in welcoming
Thank you.
Sophie Coward, Cate Blanchett, Nina Hoss, and Todd Field.